And hello, we are here for the Music Prophet. So today we have a change of pace. We've had some rap, we've had some folk music, and we're going to a whole other genre today with some jazz. And I'm really stoked because there's a huge jazz scene in Sudbury and there's a lot of talent, but some people just don't know it exists until you show it to them. So our guest today is Alex.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
So tell us about what instrument you play and sort of just give a breakdown of who you are.
I've been playing drums since I've been 18 years old. Played in a few different indie rock bands back home from the Penetanguishene and Midland area. And I moved up to Sudbury to go to school. Didn't know anybody. Didn't really know how to get into the scene here. And I heard from Alan Walsh that they didn't have a drummer for the Laurentian Jazz combo. So I went over there and started playing with them, and didn't know anything about jazz at the time. I mean, I still feel like I don't really know that much, but I just kept doing it, and it just really grew on me. I love doing it. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, what was the start though? What got you into drums and not like a brass or woodwind?
So my grandma was a music teacher at the elementary school back home in La Fontaine. And I don't know, I just went to the drums as a little kid. So she showed me a few things. I was probably like 3 years old. But then she retired the year I started elementary school. So then the new teacher didn't let anybody play the drums. So my parents, I guess, weren't loaded or anything, so they weren't able to afford a drum kit for me. And there was a piano at the house, so kind of got forced to do that for a little while. But yeah, after 15 years, I got my own kit and got into it again.
And now you're here.
Yeah, here I am.
But you sort of, because before the show, you were also talking about how jazz wasn't always a natural genre, like indie rock was sort of your thing.
Yeah, that's because I guess I played a lot of like Zeppelin, like Hendrix, stuff like that. That's how I learned to play. Just I put like whatever rock radio station was on and just play along and see what I could learn.
Yeah, that's the best way to start, right? I mean, I when I think back to when I tried to learn guitar, you just do songs of covers, and rock music is the easiest to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, but what was that like though? Like, was there certain songs that you heard the drum fills and you said, I want to do that, or?
I think what reignited my interest for playing drums was a Led Zeppelin DVD that I got for Christmas when I was like, I don't know, 13 or so. And John Bonham does his solo in Moby Dick, and I was just blown away.
That's all it took, I guess. Because, yeah, I mean, it's pretty... The technicality of the drumming in Led Zeppelin is legendary by its own.
Yeah, he grooves really hard, but he's got chops, too. It's pretty cool. Good combination of things to have.
Are there any other other rock musicians or bands that you've looked up to drumming-wise?
Yeah, like I mentioned Hendrix earlier, like Mitch Mitchell's, and I actually forget the name of Buddy Miles, I think, maybe that's a guitar player. I'm probably mixing up names here. But Mitch Mitchell's for sure, because he just had this energy and just constant filling, and something similar to like Keith Moon of The Who. Mm-hmm. Admired that, but with time I started to realize it wasn't always about just hitting stuff a lot and fast, and not to say that they're not musical players in their own right, but yeah.
But actually, that is a good point, because when it comes to metal music, it's very technical.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, there's quite a few bands that use drums to create the noise and that way. So where is that balance between drumming to create noise and creating groove?
I suppose that depends on the listener.
Yeah. It's because it would be a hard balance of what you think is good or not.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, especially when I was a younger player, I just thought, like if I had a drum fill, it's like, all right, how many notes can I fit in there? Like, how fast can I? But it's really not about that.
Yeah. Because it would come down to the listener experience too.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's all about, well, first time you had beer or wine, for example, like you may not have enjoyed it, but it could grow on you, right? I guess it's the same idea.
Yeah, the analogy works. You start off slow, and then eventually you find out that you don't need that many notes, and it's not fun after a while.
Yeah, sure. Or even from the listener's perspective, I mean, like, you get initiated to it, maybe you're not into it at first, but in time you maybe not, but...
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to... But that's rock, but with jazz, a lot of the time there are fills, and there's a lot of empty space. So did that transition to jazz music as well? That realization?
I guess in a sense, the way I looked at fills before and such is kind of like how jazz musicians are always playing, if that makes any sense. I just mean like that they have more than one thing going on. Like they're not just keeping time and they're doing a fill. It's like kind of both at the same time, if that really makes sense.
Yeah, it's a simultaneous...
Anyways, what they call it. Sorry?
No, yeah, you're right. It is a simultaneous thing.
Yeah. So just I had to really, I guess, work on independence, how hard I'm hitting stuff, where I'm setting accents and such, and like why. Is putting more purpose behind the playing, or the notes being played, I should say.
Right, because the intention is a lot of what the audience can see as well. Or rather, the audience can see your intention with.
Maybe that, and just, I mean, it's about, I guess, shaping the music and not just being one straight line, right? Giving it, I don't know, it's kind of like architecture or something, like all these buildings with all these angles and ups and downs, and kind of that idea.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It's kind of nice, and for people that are listening too, that's a really good way for them to think about it. Because with jazz, I mean, unless you enjoy music and you know the technical side of it, sometimes it can be hard to get into.
Yeah, and that's also like artist depending, and like I guess like the subgenre of jazz. There's just so much that is considered jazz, right? So I think there's something out there for everyone, really.
So what's your go-to then?
Oh, me? I like bebop a lot. Yeah.
And was that has that always been your go-to?
I mean, generally, yeah. I don't know. Most of the stuff I listen to, I think, is from say 50s to maybe the 80s. I don't listen to as much modern stuff as I probably should.
But it happens. I mean, there's a lot that's coming out now that's...
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, speaking of modern, I am going to see Kamasi Washington on Tuesday in Toronto with Herbie Hancock. I thought they were playing together, but separate. Still cool, though.
I mean, it would be kind of... Because that'd be sort of an old and new legend.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Although some of the jazz guys don't like Kamasi. They say like that doesn't follow like the lineage, the progression of it's the evolution of jazz in a sense. But
so what's your stance on it?
I don't know. I mean, if people enjoy it, then like whatever. What's the big deal with like all these labels and stuff? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is a really good way to think about it because if the audience or listener enjoys the music, it doesn't really matter, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the end result too. I've always found that with art in general, that all that really matters is that the person experiencing it is enjoying it, and that's why you're making it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that Kamasi is more of like a hip hop sort of background. So I don't know, it just brings an interesting twist to things.
But what is your background, like your family heritage?
I got a mix. Actually, funny, I just said German. There's like a tiny little bit in there. Italian, Irish, French, Ojibwe.
Yeah, because you're involved with a lot of like the powwows and a lot of the Ojibwe culture is sort of...
I mean, a little bit. I helped with the organizing of the one we had at Laurentian this year. Other than that, I've been to a few, like I've done some fire keeping and stuff. I don't know.
Does that influence your creativity in a bit to channel that, do you find?
Honestly, I've never really thought about that. So I'm going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. It's just like, it's something that's more new to me. It's not something I grew up with. It's not like a huge part of my life. Yeah.
Right, because as a kid, you don't really notice it, and...
No. I just mean like the whole Indigenous side of things. Like, I don't know, it's something that is more recent and just kind of looking into it and trying to figure stuff out. Because, yeah, it's been a few generations now, and it's been kind of gone, so...
Right, it sort of reminds me of Tom Wilson when he came to Wordstock, and he's played the Northern Lights too, and over the years, and his last album was actually him exploring his Ojibwa root heritage and trying to find his mother and parents, which created an entire album of songs, which is pretty incredible because he's adopted, I believe. But it's really interesting. So that's why I was kind of curious but do you even musically, do you find that French and like the more your background cultures, the music of that has influenced your playing now?
Actually, yeah, a little bit. Just like the French traditional kind of music, and me being part of Hugh Jazz now. I mean, that's helped for sure.
How is the experience of playing with Will and the guys playing gypsy jazz?
I think the trickiest part was to get used to playing with the loop pedal, because once Eric gets to solo, he sets the guitar in the loop, so it just goes over and over, right? And you can solo over that. I don't know. I guess it's just hard because it's the same thing, so you gotta think of ways to be creative and not just keep repeating the same kind of pattern. So yeah,
because it's technical, but it's also you have to have the awareness of of both at the same time.
Mm-hmm. But they're really good at listening. So I mean, kind of do what I want. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What got you
what was the start to getting into playing with them?
I think it's through, Will had seen me play with Jacob. We had been talking a little while about getting a band together.
And that's with the Starlet Trio? Or Jacob Starlet Trio?
Starling, yeah. I mean, we actually played as a quintet for like a good year. Saxophone and another guitarist as well. And it ended up being mostly trio stuff for a couple of years. But anyways, yeah, Will was looking to start some kind of funk band, and we started a secret project, which I'm not supposed to say anything about, but it's not really funk, but I mean it's groovy, and I think by September we'll probably start playing some shows.
So that'll be fun, then. That'll be a nice little change for pace.
Yeah, I start playing rock music again. Why not?
You played with Sex and Summer for a while too, in Sudbury, and your indie background, so it'll be nice to go back to roots. When you go from a jam session playing something that's funk or indie rock based and then you leave the house and you go to another jam session that's gypsy jazz. Is that a mindset shift, or what is it that gets you in the right headspace?
Well, I've had nights where I do like a jazz thing and then immediately go to like the townhouse and do a rock thing, and different feeling. I don't know. Kind of just do it.
Because you have to, yeah.
I guess everything kind of just falls into place when I get there. I don't know.
Yeah, you have. I mean, as a drummer, you don't really have the option to.
Yeah.
You're the rhythm for everyone, so. But that's an interesting jumping point, because when you make a mistake, do you cover it up, or?
I try my best. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I think it didn't work and it did, or vice versa. Yeah. That also depends on the listener.
If they can tell or not?
Yeah. No, it's just, I have this bad tendency of making a face when I mess up. Just because I get upset. I'm like, ah.
And so the listener can watch and see that face and they're like, oh.
Yeah. And they're like, why did you do that? Like, it sounded fine.
Which makes sense. Unless they're very technical, then they won't catch it, or they don't know the song timing. So.
Just not musicians. Yeah.
Yeah. But is that common? Within jazz, is it very common for people to make mistakes throughout?
I mean, I'd say so. Yeah. Because, a lot of times you're kind of just playing ideas that are coming to you on the spot, maybe. I guess the big thing with jazz is kind of, and this is what I've heard from a lot of people, and this is how I see it, is like just kind of trying to always cover up your mistakes.
It's interesting. That is an interesting quote, because then it just makes you really look at jazz as a whole. But it's what it feels too. And I mean, during the break, we were talking about jazz music and how before the show, I was curious what it would be like to have 8-minute songs instead of short 3 or 4 minute songs, because you can't cut out a jazz song because there's so many fills, there's so many spaces you fill up. But within the
miss someone's solo, and could be a moment in there that make or break it for you,
Right? There could be a moment at 6.5 minutes that's just a beautiful solo.
That's it. I remember listening to I think it was Bubbles by Herbie Hancock on the album Man-Child, and it kind of just lightly builds for about 3 minutes, and then there's just this one saxophone line that lasts just like a few bars, and it's pretty much it. But when that line comes in, oh my god, it hit me, like I felt it.
Yeah, that was your moment after 5 minutes of build up. That was the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always fascinated me because, and I feel like people listening have probably the same effect or the same approach to it. Is that, like when you start listening to jazz, it sounds very similar. It's very repetitive, but when you really get into it, and even the International Jazz Day at the Fromagerie, I really started paying attention to individual instruments, and it's incredible how they all work separately to make one big sound.
Mm-hmm. You saying that made me think of a conversation I had with my friend Josh Hubert. He was talking about how a lot of the really good jazz tunes that just any tune really, any piece of music that kind of withstood the test of time, I believe it's like where everything kind of sounds as one versus all the instruments kind of being separate.
Mm-hmm. Because that's the end result, is you want to have one final thing that everyone clings to, I guess.
I guess you could say that.
And it's different compared to rock music, where they do favor guitar solos or drum solos. That's their go-to.
Yeah. Occasional saxophone solo.
Yeah. Yeah. Every now and then a band pulls in a featured saxophonist just for about 30 seconds of the track, and that's it.
Yeah. Pink Floyd.
Mm-hmm. Or Najuan has their flute player. Or Marc Najuan, he played Northern Lights, I believe, but his band is incredible and has a flute player that she fills in space that the rest of the band leaves.
Okay.
And it's great because it's so subtle like that.
Nice.
It's not a forced sound. It's just the flute kicks in every now and then, and you just really appreciate it. It's interesting, but it's kind of like that, like electric guitar in a band where they go for a solo, you hear it, and then it fades out.
I suppose, I mean, it's like if you oversay or overdo something, it loses its effect, right? So I guess, yeah, like you're saying, it just being kind of here and there and subtle is it's doing exactly what its intention was, you know? Not just filling up for the sake of filling up sound.
Yeah. Is there a project that you've worked in that sort of developed that skill set for you, or that developed that knowledge?
Not in particular. It's mainly just a lot of little moments, and just talking to people, and listening to other players, and comparing myself to who I think are like greats.
Yeah, makes sense, right? Because you started jazz sort of unintentionally, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I didn't even like jazz before. I remember going to my uncle's wedding when I was probably like 15 or so. They had a big band playing, and I was like, what is this?
Just not into it.
He's like, why? I just wanted to leave. But I mean, now I'd be stoked if I showed up at a wedding and they had a big band.
It's just a completely different approach to it.
But I mean, I think even without going to Laurentian and playing in the combo, like I probably would have eventually gone into jazz, just because a lot of the guys that I was looking up to, I was starting to look at who their idols were and just kind of going back that way. And they were always jazz guys. So.
Yeah, because that's the way that, I mean, that's where the most educational and technical drumming comes in, right? That's funny. But the fact it's a big band at a wedding, that's just...
In his house, too.
Was he a musician? Was that?
Yeah. He's a trombonist.
Yeah. That would make sense.
Yeah.
That's funny, though. So I guess, I mean, speaking of big band and sort of icons, you mentioned that Herbie Hancock is your go-to icon.
Well, not necessarily, but sorry.
Well, so actually, that's a good point. Like, who are the people that you try to imitate and learn from?
Although I've been told before by somebody that my playing didn't exactly sound like it, Elvin Jones has been a pretty big influence on me. I'm into Roy Haynes too. I don't know, those are some pretty big guys I'm listening to right now, like Terry Clark from Toronto. I mean, I could name off just a bunch of guys, but that's who I've been listening to recently.
Right. I mean, you could do that cliche interview thing where you just name off like the 12 names and then just here are 12 people that I recently saw somewhere.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, that's that it makes it different. Like having those to model, and even if you might not directly sound like it, if when you aspire to sound like a person, then you definitely do. Like you grow as a person, right?
I think so. Yeah. That's it. I mean, yeah. If we're not learning, then we're not growing.
That was fun. I'm really glad that Alex was able to come on today and give us a breakdown of drumming and jazz, and also just kind of when it comes to the jazz scene, Alex is a really good way to start getting into it and really start to introduce yourself to jazz, especially, and find it.
Thank you.
And so tell us where we can find you, though, and what you're working on.
Well, I got a few different projects on the go, but the one that I perform with weekly right now is Hugh Jazz. They've been together for a long time. I just joined them at the beginning of summer. So we're at the Townhouse every Wednesday night from 7 to 10 p.m.
Perfect. And so when you guys want jazz and you want to see him drumming, you can find him there. Thanks for listening to The Music Prophet, and we'll see you next week.